The world of work is changing faster than ever. There's a lot of noise out there about staying relevant, and most of it is very vague or just completely unrealistic. You don't need to become a thought leader, although I do work with a lot of clients on that, but that is not something that you have to do. You don't have to constantly reinvent yourself, which I think social media has made us feel like we need to do. And you definitely do not need to take a course every other week just to keep up. I know some of you like that, but you don't have to do it. What you do need to do is pay attention. Relevance is what keeps you from being left out of important conversations. It's what helps people think of you for new roles, projects, and opportunities, whether you are job hunting or not. In this episode, we are going to talk about what relevance actually looks like, how to stay ahead without burning yourself out, and how to use my Control Your Career process to keep growing in the direction that actually makes sense for you in your career. Welcome to Control Your Career. I'm Julia Toothaker, your strategic career consultant, and I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast is all about helping ambitious professionals take control of their career with clarity and confidence. Now, you might not be job searching right now, though I know some of you are. You might love your current role, but if you're not paying attention to the shifts that are happening in your workplace or in the industry or in the world of work at large, you might be falling behind without even realizing it. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things today, but at the top of the list, it's going to be about how to keep your skills sharp, how to stay visible without feeling like you're self-promoting. And I do actually have an episode on that if you want to check it out from this season. And then also how to continue to evolve within the landscape that you're in instead of getting left behind. And we're going to do this by walking through my Control Your Career process so that you can figure out what is the best path for you. Before we jump into the process, I want to go over a few things around this topic that I think will help set the stage a little bit. Because here's what's happening. Relevance is, I think, sometimes hard to define because everything is moving so quickly. And so I don't want you to think that relevance is about like chasing the next shiny new skill or being trendy. So in this work context right now, AI is the really big topic. Now, do I think that you need to understand AI? Absolutely. Do I think that you need to go out and get all these certifications and take trainings and all of that? Absolutely not, because I don't think that anybody truly understands what they're doing yet. So I just want to set the stage in terms of the AI conversation with that. But relevance within your career, it's about really just staying connected and understanding your own evolution within your career. And so understanding the work that you do, understanding your role, understanding your industry, and how you fit within that. It's understanding what is coming next and not just holding on to the past or holding on to what is comfortable for you, but really being able to take a step back and go, I can see the writing on the wall. I can see where this organization is headed. I can see what they're asking of me, and do I have the skills? And so it's really being able to strategically look at your position. And I know for some of you, that's going to be a hard thing to do because you're just not used to looking at your career that way, but that's what it means to be relevant. And I think it's also important to note that relevance is being good at your job. I think sometimes we think that it's all about connections, and that is very true. It is. But you also have to be good at what you do, and you have to be so valuable that people are going to want to seek you out for what you know. That is really the epitome and the height of being relevant in your career. And I mentioned in the beginning that the world of work is changing very quickly. And I will say I've been doing this for, at the time of this recording, about 14-ish years. And we always talk about skills and we talk about upskilling, making sure that your skills are relevant for the workforce. And I have to say, in the last probably 5 to 6 years, this is the quickest that I've seen upskilling need to happen. And I think a lot of that does have to do with AI, but I think the landscape of the world of work is just shifting so quickly that so many people are getting left behind or they're not quite sure how to adapt because it is moving so quickly and there are so many pressures put on us. So I wanted to bring a couple of statistics so that you understand what this looks like. So I did get a couple of statistics from different resources, and I'm going to link those into the blog post for this episode so that you can go read them for yourself. But one report that I looked at said that 63% of employers say that skills gaps are one of their biggest obstacles to transform. And so I don't know the source in terms of like what the specific skills are, but I think just in general, upskilling the workforce is very difficult. And because we don't ever know what's coming, that becomes even more difficult as we continue through the years. Another survey said more than half of workers think that their skills could be obsolete in 5 years. This is actually very common. We talk about skills and positions becoming obsolete. AI is going to play a big role in that over the next 5 to 10 years, but we don't 100% know what that's going to look like. So we don't want to jump the gun on assuming that positions are going to be taken, but we have to understand AI enough to understand how our role could be impacted. So that is something that you do need to think about. But we also have to understand that just because you went to college, just because you did XYZ training and all of that, doesn't mean that that information is going to be relevant in the next 5 to 10 years. And so that's why it's important to stay up on any kind of skill building and what is going on specifically within your function or your industry. And so what we're seeing now more than ever is that skills are becoming outdated faster than we can actually reskill people. And that's not only within an organization, but that's with us personally. I put a lot of onus on the employee to bolster their skills because so many companies do not pay for any kind of professional development and upskilling these days. Some do, but many don't. And so a lot of that is going to fall to you to find those resources. And I'll talk about some resources as we go on. But that's the thing that you have to understand is, are you staying on top of things, making sure that you are staying relevant within your function and industry, specifically just around skills, not anything else, is something that you really have to take seriously. We're also just seeing so many new careers and new industries emerge so quickly that you might look at what you're doing now, and in 7 years, you might be doing something completely different that you didn't even know about. And so I want you to keep that in the back of your mind when we're talking about relevance. There are so many opportunities that we can take from how quickly the world of work is changing. Okay. One thing that I wanted to do in this episode that I haven't done in other episodes is talk about some hypothetical examples of what relevance can look like in a professional setting. Because I think sometimes, and this is especially true for my mid and late career professionals, they end up getting just left. They end up getting left in the dark when it comes to their profession. So I put together a couple of examples just to give you an idea of what this can look like. Now, you might see yourself in this or not, but I think it's helpful for you to be able to reflect into your position. Does this apply to me? So my first example is going to be a marketing manager in manufacturing. So this person spent years running successful traditional marketing campaigns, but the company is moving toward data-driven digital marketing. The younger teammates are using automation, content analytics, and AI tools. And this person has not kept up, not because they don't want to, they just thought that what they had done in their career and all the successes they had in traditional campaigns was enough to carry them through to the end of their career. So what's happening now is the younger workforce is coming in with all of these extra tools, all of this new knowledge that this person doesn't have. Now, does that negate the knowledge that this person has? Absolutely not. Understanding traditional campaigns is huge, and you understand just how marketing has shifted and evolved over the years. But what's happened is their focus has been so much on traditional marketing that now their skills in the digital landscape have really just fallen off. And so understanding what that looks like for you. Now, that doesn't mean that her skills or their skills are going to be any less relevant. Traditional marketing still exists. But we have to also understand, how can we work better together? How can we upskill? How can this person also train the younger generations in traditional marketing, and how do we work together? Let's look at another example. This is an IT director in finance. This person runs mission critical legacy systems. I know we all love anything with the term legacy in it. But leadership is now making a shift and focusing more on cloud-first AI integrated platforms. And this person, because they had been part of this really core function, this legacy system, they didn't get involved with any of the cross-functional training, any of the task force needed to think about this cloud-first AI integrated platform. They didn't do any of the upskilling workshops. So there were things that were offered and they didn't do it. And now they're seeing newer team members be more innovative and moving up within the organization very quickly. And they're realizing that they're not being asked the same questions that they were 5 years ago. They're not being, asked to be at the table for these conversations because they did not volunteer. They didn't get into some of the earlier conversations around this. Now, is this a common thing? This is something that I have seen with clients happen, where you think that a system is not going to age out, and sometimes it does, or you are just there in your corner not doing anything. You're managing the system, but there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. And then what ends up happening is all these new things eventually will replace whatever this legacy system is. And so for those of you who are in situations where you're dealing with a program or something that's been around for a really long time, you're an expert in it, you know all the ins and outs and all that, that's awesome. Like, I love that. But also, if you see that the tide is turning in your organization, you also need to jump on that bus, because you have historical knowledge. You are going to be the best person to be able to have a conversation around, oh, I can see where we can integrate this. I can see where we can make a shift and a transition. You will be the one that will be able to say, hey, here's what this system can do. Here's how we can make a shift. And then you become relevant to that type of transition and will likely become a partner within that. So again, make sure that if things are offered and it relates or could potentially impact the work that you're doing, make sure that you are on those task force, in those calls, doing those trainings. Whether you think it would impact you or not, it's going to be helpful to be at the table. And then my last example of how this can happen in the workplace is an HR partner in healthcare. So this is somebody who is really great at engagement surveys and benefits planning. But in their organization, remote teams, DEI initiatives, and more strategic workforce planning has really become a priority within HR. But this person doesn't know anything about that. And so they are seeing people get hired. They are seeing leadership go to other team members, asking for input, putting them on teams together, just having these conversations. And this person is being left out. Now, there are two ways to think about this, especially within HR, which I know is a very niche area, as every area is. But somebody who's really good at surveys, who's really good at benefits planning, they might not want to be a part of the other stuff. And I think that that's okay. However, if there are opportunities for you to be at the table and have a voice as it relates to the things that you want to do, you want to make sure that you are doing that. Now, I could get really niche with this and talk about the impact of remote and DEI on the surveys and the benefits planning and all of that. I'm not going to, but that is how nuanced this can get to the situation that you are in. So I think the whole point of me sharing these three examples is so that you understand what this can look like in the workplace and how you need to evaluate your position to understand, am I relevant? Am I somebody that people are going to come to for an opinion? Do they want me on the task force? Do they want me at the table on this group? Whatever it is, you want to make sure that if you want to be that person, you are that person. Not everybody wants to be at the table. That is also fine. But you have to understand that for yourself and be able to go, you know what? I'm good doing this. I know that I can speak into XYZ, or maybe I want to do a little training on this just to understand what's going on, but I don't necessarily want to be at the table. But again, understand what that means for yourself. You also have to think, even if you are that person, that relevance is going to give you options. And when we talk about controlling your career, that is huge. You want to be able to say yes or no to something. You don't want to have to be forced into making a change because somebody else wants that to happen. So being aware of what's going on is going to help you be able to control your career even more. I think too, confidence is something that we talk about a lot, and staying relevant really keeps your confidence going, and it keeps you engaged in the work that you're doing at the organization that you are in, because now you feel valued and you are being asked to be at the table. And I think that's so important as well. Relevance also makes you more promotable, makes you more hireable, and honestly, more resistant to getting overlooked, which in this landscape right now, when we're talking about layoffs, you want to be the person that they say, we cannot let that person go because they are so key to whatever this project is, or they've been able to offer a lot of insight across different teams that we want to make sure that we keep. So relevance can look different in different scenarios, but we want to make sure that we understand what relevance looks like for us in our career, in our positions. Okay, I know that was a long intro for this, but we have to set the stage. And I think this is such a unique topic that is really going to look different for each person. So I wanted to make sure that we could really set the stage on that. But now I want to go through the Control Your Career framework. So this is my 5-stage framework where we're going to take this issue of relevance and walk through each of the stages just to see what is going on for you. So now we're taking something that's like a little bit more vague and allowing you to think through it more intentionally for your situation. Stage 1 is going to be realistic reality. And I do believe that this is one of the most important sections that you can go through for any of the career challenges that we talk about. And when it comes to relevance, there are a couple of things that I want to make sure that you are looking at and being very realistic about. I think when it comes to relevance, realistic reality is going to be so core to this process. So first we need to understand the industry trends that are happening. So what are some of the shifts that are going on? I know we've talked about AI. That is a huge one. But are there other things that are going on? Is there any kind of other automation? Has consumer behavior changed? Has the company been bought or sold? Sorry, that's more company based, but industry, like what are big industry things that are happening that are going to impact you in any type of way? And then what are the company priorities? So this would be where if a company is bought or sold, could come into play here. But what are the budgets saying? Where are we putting money? What is the strategy? What do you hear leadership saying? Are the org charts changing? That has been huge. We're seeing a lot of organizations go more flat, which I don't think is a good choice, but that's what's happening right now. And so, what is shifting and changing, and how do you fit into that? And then skill demand. We talked about this earlier, but you have to get really specific for your function and your role. What is being asked more often in meetings, on job postings, and in performance reviews? And then the last thing to think about in realistic reality is reputation perception. And this is huge, especially for my more experienced professionals. You have to ask yourself, are you seen as someone who is more forward thinking, or are you considered old guard? I cannot tell you how many environments I've been in where people who are considered old guard eventually get orged out, which means that they are redoing the org chart in order to let somebody go, which sounds terrible, but that is what happens when a company is trying to figure out who do we need here that's going to help move the company forward in the direction that we want to go. So understanding that and being very real with yourself about which one you fit in is going to be helpful. Now, having said that, I know some of you who think, oh, I probably am old guard. It doesn't mean that you can't also be forward thinking. I think that there is a lot of merit in being a good combination of both. You have to understand the industry, you have to understand the organization and what has happened to be able to understand what can happen moving forward and be that person that can say, hey, here are some potential obstacles. Whether the company listens or not is something different, but being able to see both sides, I actually think is an advantage and really helpful as long as you have a seat at the table. So really think about, for you in your position, what is changing in your work, in your industry that you have been ignoring, avoiding, or underestimating. I know for a lot of you, it's going to be AI. A lot of you are pushing back on it. You don't want to be a part of it. You see other people using it and you don't like how they're using it. I get it. But you have to at least understand how it's going to impact you. You have to look at it from the lens of, how could this take my job? How can it make me more efficient? How can it make me better at my job? So really start to ask yourself that. Then we go into stage 2, which is identity analysis. And this is where we are really looking at your personality. And so when it comes to this idea of relevance, it's really about what makes me valuable. And in some cases, maybe where am I being underutilized? Where can I really say, hey, I have this skill that you might want to use, assuming it's a skill that you like. One thing that we talk a lot about is energy. And I think that it sounds like a woo-woo word, but it's really not. You really have to understand what you enjoy doing, and where you do have energy and where you do get excited. And so when it comes to relevance, if you're not excited about it, then it's not going to be something that you want to do, and people can tell. And so really this combination of your strengths and your energy are going to be really helpful. And so understanding what that looks like for you in your career. And it doesn't mean that it's something you've always done. Just because you've done it doesn't mean that you enjoy it, doesn't mean that you get energy from it. So you do have to make that distinction for yourself. And so when it comes to strengths and energy, I want you to ask yourself, what do you do exceptionally well that you enjoy, but is also relevant? And I think that's going to be the key changer for you to understand relevancy in your position. We've talked a lot about skills. I highly recommend doing some kind of skills audit. This is something that I offer in my Control Your Career program, as well as my career advancement intensive. We do a skills audit, and oh my gosh, I love doing this with clients because I get to ask them questions. They really get to evaluate what skills they enjoy and what skills they hate and what skills they have, but they don't want to use anymore. It's amazing. Anyway, definitely do a skills audit. What are the skills that you have really relied on for many, many years, kind of those core skills? But what are skills that you have outgrown? And I'll tell you from my experience, my background is actually in art and graphic design. So I have a really strong graphic design background. Everything that you see, my website, anything that comes out from me, I have likely designed it. And so when I was working full time, one of my positions required me to use it because I was doing a lot of marketing. But the next position, I didn't have to use it. And I will tell you, it was actually very refreshing. While I do love my design skills and my art background, it always felt like it was being used too much. And I loved having a position where somebody else could do it and I didn't have to do it. So that was really helpful. So what have you outgrown? Okay. And then also what is missing? So this is part of the upskilling. What do you feel like you need more skills in? And be really honest with yourself. Some of you think that you need upskilling in something that you actually have experience in. So really get nuanced with that and understand, especially technologically, what are some additional skills that you could utilize. And then I want you to think about your values. We always talk about values. I think it's so core to who we are. But I want you to ask yourself if any of your values have shifted. Do you want more of something? Do you want to be more innovative? Do you want more stability? Do you want more visibility? Is purpose an issue? Because when we're talking about relevancy, those things need to be aligned. So when you understand your values and what you're looking for just in life and in your career, that can also be a guide to how you want to be relevant within your career. And again, some of you might not want to be, and that is okay, but you have to understand it. Okay. A couple of things to consider as well, in terms of examples of how this could play out. Because I know some of you are like, what do you mean values? What do you mean energy and strength? Ugh. Okay. So a couple of examples. You may be really good at operations. That might be like your core function, but you want to be more creative and you want to have more of an impact and you've like lost that connection. And so what can that look like moving forward? What skills do you need to develop to help you move and be more creative and have more impact? And can that happen in your current company, or is that something you have to find somewhere else? You've mastered your role. This happens so much. You've mastered your role, but you stopped learning. And if you are somebody that likes to learn and you stop learning, now you're being drained. I'll be honest. At the time of this recording, I feel like I'm not learning enough. I think that I'm a little bit on autopilot right now, and it impacts my energy because I get excited about clients and I love doing this type of teaching stuff, but on a day-to-day basis, sometimes I feel like I'm not feeding that learner within me. If we're into strengths, that learner within me needs more of that. And so that's how that's how I stay relevant, is learning new things, researching all of that. I haven't done a lot of that recently. And so that's something that I know I even need to do more for myself. Okay, stage 3, purpose-driven plan. This is where we talk about goals. Now, one thing that I always like to talk about when it comes to the next 2 stages, stage 3 and stage 4, The plan is really going to be tailored to you. Your goal is going to be tailored to you. What I'm going to do in this section is give you some examples of goals that are common for this challenge just to help you get started. So it's really about just like kickstarting ideas for you, and then you have to choose what makes the most sense. One thing I do recommend in the blog post for this episode, and it might be in the show notes too, I have a link to a worksheet where you can actually write all these things out. So you can listen to me and you can write out what is relevant for you in each stage, what you want to take with you. And that can also help you work through some of this in a more, unique way to you. Okay, but for stage 3, purpose-driven plan, we want to think about our goals. We want to think about where we are headed. And as you know, I am very practical when it comes to goals. And so we want to stay as practical as possible. In this scenario, we are not talking about like the big dreamy goals. Okay, that's different. That's a different process. So for relevance specifically, we can think about a couple areas. One is short-term goals. So what is a skill that you want to develop? What's a relationship that would be good for you to have? What do you need in terms of visibility? What does that look like, right? And so breaking that down even more. So when we're talking about upskilling, what can that look like? Do you need to take a course? I know I said earlier you don't have to take a course, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. So is there a course or a training that you need to take? Can you shadow somebody within your organization, or even just do some type of just like informational interview with somebody who's doing something that you want to do or working on a project that you're interested in? Are there conferences you can go to? I love a conference, I must say. And within your organization, is there any opportunity for cross-functional work? That a lot of times always seems to like ignite people. And in terms of relevance, it allows other people in the organization to see you. Then we want to talk about what our role can look like. So possible role expansion within the organization. This is not always possible for some people, but if this is something that you can do, I really want you to think about it. And so what that means is really piloting, spearheading something new in your current position instead of looking for a new job. And so it's just looking for a new project, being on some kind of committee or task force or something like that. That's a really good goal because, again, it allows for visibility, it allows for relevance, and it allows you a seat at the table. And then, as I mentioned before, visibility is huge. And so what is your plan for that? If you're somebody that's really been in the shadows a lot and you're trying to be more visible in order to be more relevant, what do you believe that you need in order to do that? So for some people, it's going to be visibility within the organization. So something like the role expansion is going to be really helpful. But for others, if you're like, no, I want it to be bigger, I want to be known in my function, in my industry, then you might want to engage more on LinkedIn or go do podcasts or something that's going to get you out there. So you want to choose between those just in order to not overwhelm yourself when it comes to visibility, because it can be a lot if you are not used to it. I think what's important to remember when it comes to our goals is it needs to be practical, it needs to be relevant to you, and it needs to be the thing that's going to help you make some traction quickly. So you don't have to do everything that I just said. Those are just ideas. So which one makes the most sense for you right now that you can do? And a lot of times I recommend a quick win. What is something that you can do that's going to get you a quick win, that's going to help keep the action and the momentum moving forward? Speaking of action, we are going into stage 4, which is initiate action. A lot of times this is where I see people fall off. You have the goals, you understand what you need to do, but then to actually take the next step, to actually take action in something, that's where people get really held up, and we see them stall. When it comes to relevance, relevance is all about action. If you are not taking action, you are not going to be relevant. And some action steps that you can take, again, the action steps are going to be related to the goal. So if you chose a specific goal, your actions need to align with that goal. I'm going to give you some general action steps, many of which are based on the goals that I mentioned, so would likely be helpful for you, but you are going to have to really identify that for yourself. So a couple of options: have a conversation with your manager. That is one of the easiest ones, especially if you are looking for other opportunities to be visible. Have a conversation with them, get their feedback. Obviously, if it's a safe space. If it's not, then that's going to look a little bit different. But allowing them to understand where you're at and what you're trying to do is going to be really helpful. I mentioned joining like a cross-functional team or something going on in the organization. So yes, that's a goal, but then you have to actually go join the team. So you need to talk to whoever is in charge, or you need to find out what's available. And so that could also be part of a conversation with your manager. One thing that I really think is underutilized by a lot of professionals is actually planning time for upskilling, whether that's weekly or monthly, but giving yourself space to learn. And it doesn't have to be formal training. It could be, I'm going to take an hour just to read through articles about my industry, or, I'm going to read through thought leaders' posts on LinkedIn and comment and all of that. It doesn't have to be huge, but making time for that is really great and simple action for you to get started if you're not ready to take a bigger action. Another action that I think is helpful when we're talking about relevance outside of our organization, so where we want to have a bigger impact. So maybe you do want to be a thought leader. I have a lot of clients who want to go that route. You have to look at your LinkedIn. You have to go through your profile. You need to understand what your profile is saying about you, as well as start to produce content for that. I'm not going to go in depth with that because that could be a whole other episode, but I do have some resources for that I'll put into the blog post as well. Okay. So our actions, some of them are going to sound like some of our habits. So we're going to switch over into stage 5, which is high impact habits. Habits are not always something I'm going to recommend depending on what you're trying to do. But when it comes to relevance, relevance and visibility are very similar in terms of you have to be on people's radar. And in order to do that, you have to develop some really good habits. Now, when it comes to relevance, there's going to be some different habits that are helpful. One is going to be you have to be informed. So you have to understand what's going on in your function, in your industry, in order to be relevant within your organization. And so making sure that you are getting newsletters that are relevant to you. I love setting up Google alerts for different things. That's been really helpful for me. So anything that you want to know about within your industry or function, make sure that you know where to search and you have that information at your fingertips. I'm always big on reflection. So maybe monthly when it comes to this, getting out that notebook or that notes app, whatever you have for yourself, and doing some reflection on where were you relevant, or where were there opportunities that you did take, or maybe where were there opportunities that you missed that you could have taken. And then finally, skills. I mentioned this in the action section, but setting some regular time, weekly or monthly, for upskilling and just information gathering, learning of some kind. I think that is probably one of the best habits that you can integrate right now if you are looking for more relevance. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, okay. With LinkedIn, this is if you want to go the more thought leader route, but build habits around LinkedIn. So one thing that I do is I try to go on a couple times a week and just comment. and just be a part of the conversation. So you don't have to do it every day, but maybe plan a half hour a couple times a week for you to go on LinkedIn and either make a post or go in and comment, and just try to keep that going as much as possible. It's important to remember that relevance is really about staying connected to your work, your industry, and to your own professional growth. That is how people keep thinking about you. It's how you spot changes early and how you decide what is worth your time. So if you have been feeling stuck or invisible or feel like you're behind, you don't have to redo everything. You don't have to leave your current position, but you need to start paying attention to what is going on and then make intentional moves. I went over a lot in this particular episode. So here's what I want you to focus on for this week. Notice what is shifting within your company or your industry. And then I want you to ask yourself what feels outdated in what you're doing, in your own approach to your work. And then I want you to reach out. I want you to reach out to somebody who is doing work that you think is different. Someone who is thinking differently, who is doing something that you really admire, that you are like, oh, I want to be more like that, and schedule a coffee chat with them just to catch up and understand what they are doing. If this resonated with you and you want to keep the momentum going, please subscribe so that you do not miss the rest of this season. I would love for you to share this episode with a colleague or a friend who might also be worried about staying relevant, especially in this AI landscape that we are currently in. And I would love it if you could go on to Apple Podcasts and leave a review about this season or about the podcast in general, just to let people know how it has helped you in your career. And I mentioned this before, but I do have the Control Your Career worksheet that is going to be linked in the show notes and the blog post for this episode. Thanks for being here. And until next time, keep taking control of your career.